Ladies, gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Germinal Van. Today, I'd like to talk to you about my 16th book entitled Political Decisions and Economic Outcomes. The book is available on Amazon.com as paperback and ebook. It is also available on other online retail platforms such as Google Books. And I will post the link of this book, the Amazon link, on the description of this video. I decided to write this book because I wanted to clarify, not just clarify, but I wanted to warn the reader about the fact that we are losing our rights. And we are losing our rights because we are asking the government to do more for us than we can do ourselves. I fundamentally and staunchly believe that people are better off allocating their own resources than the government would do for them. Because as Milton Friedman used to say, no one can take better care of your property than your own, than yourself, pretty much. You cannot expect even the people that you love to take a better care of what you own than yourself. So this code can we can apply this code pretty much to everything. So this book is pretty much a in-depth analysis of government intervention. I explain in the book that government intervention, government laws and regulation do not mostly lead to adversarial outcomes rather than beneficial results for us, specifically in economic terms. And in the book, I explain that the reason. So basically, this book is a warning. It is a warning uh, about not just the reader, but people in general, saying that, guys, we are losing our rights because we're asking the government to do too much. We're putting too much power in the hands of the state. We're asking other individuals who pay no price for whatsoever decision they make on our behalf to take care of us. We're delegating too much of our own responsibilities to the government because we believe that the government has a moral duty to perform toward us. But it's not the case. The role of the government has never been to feed his citizens. The role of the government has been to protect the rights of the citizens. The role of the government has been to protect the life of the citizen by providing a police force to prevent people from physically coercing with one another. We have a government to protect us from uh, foreign and domestic attacks. That's why we have an army. We have a government to protect us and to grant us the right to property. Basically, we have the right to property, and we're asking the government to protect that right. That's why we have a judicial system, so that we can use that judicial system to enforce contracts when we enter a contract with someone and that contract is about to be breached. That's why we have government, and maybe I can add a fourth function of government, which is to provide infrastructure. So the infrastructure such as roads, bridges, so the public goods that individuals cannot necessarily get created themselves, we let the government providing that for us. So these are the four functions of government pretty much. But over time, we've been asking the government to do more and more and more. We want the government to give us healthcare. We want the government to give us education. We want the government to give us to create programs to do this and to do that. But the problem is, those programs are created at the expense of those who have the ability to create the wealth. Because let us not forget that the government is a propertyless entity. For the government to create a program, it needs to create it through taxation. And taxation means that you take uh, money from the citizens, especially from those who produce the most, who have higher incomes. You take from them to give it to those who don't have it. instead of letting those who have the ability to create the wealth create that wealth to create more opportunities to leave those, or should I say the have nots, to get employment and to basically improve their living standard. Because the cure to poverty is not government programs, is not handouts. The cure to poverty is production, as Henry Hazlitt said. If you want to help the poor, give him a job, make him productive, and you will improve his life. That is why, in a market, in a free society, in a market-based economy, it is substantially important for people who have the ability to create the wealth to do so. Because if you prevent them by imposing, whether it's a capital levy or a progressive income tax or even a minimum wage, if you impose those regulations on them, you're not just hurting them, you're also hurting those who have trouble to improve their living standard. So that is why I wrote this book, because the government makes decisions that don't lead to good outcomes. It doesn't mean that every single decisions that the government makes is bad, of course not, but most of them, because the government does not own anything. So when you do not own anything, you do not bear the responsibility of that thing you own. So when the government makes decisions, when government creates programs, those programs are doomed to fail, whether it is intentional or unintentional. Because the failure of a program strengthen and expand the power of government. Because when the program fails, the government says that there was not enough resources for that program to sustain. So we need to create a new program that will actually come and compensate the program that failed. Once again, the government is asking for more taxes to be collected to create a new program, and that new program that will be created will eventually be deficient or completely fail as well. That's how the government functions. Because for government to remain relevant, it cannot the program it creates has to be deficient. The government does not think in terms of profit, it thinks in terms of expansion of power. Those who think in terms of profit are the entrepreneur, because for a business to work, it has to generate profit, it has to sell, it has to be efficient. But for a government service to work, it has to be deficient, because the more it is deficient, the more it gives more legitimacy for the government to create new programs again. So that's how government makes its profit. So it's important to understand the mentality of the government. That's even the mentality of the bureaucrats. Bureaucrats have been using their education, thinking that they know more than people what is best for people, because they have PhDs, they have master's degrees. They think that they know more than the layman what is best for the layman, and the layman has been intimidated by the level of education of the bureaucrats, and say, oh, this guy's a PhD, he's definitely smart, so he knows more than me, I'm going to delegate my responsibility to him to do that for me. But ladies and gentlemen, let us understand that the politician, the bureaucrat, is not our friend, because the bureaucrat and the politician are two individuals like you and I. They're self-interested. They're using the public sector to maximize their own utility and their own access to resources. Let me say that again. The bureaucrats and the politicians are not our friends. They use the public sector to maximize their utility and to maximize their access to public resources. That's what the politicians do. That's why the politicians never keep their promise. They only try to fulfill the demands of the constituency. They do not try to fulfill the demand of the general population. because politicians don't create wealth. Government bureaucrats don't create wealth. They don't create jobs. They don't improve living standard. They don't do that. What they do is to implement regulations to compete with the private sector, because the government, the state apparatus, has its own agenda that is not the agenda of the people. That is why there is a substantial dissociation between political decisions and economic outcomes. That's why I named this book that way. Political decisions and economic outcomes, because the state apparatus doesn't have the same agenda as the citizenry. We are not on the same page as those politicians and bureaucrats. Politicians and bureaucrats, all they do is to ensure that they expand the power of the state for their own benefits. Of course, it doesn't mean that there is no politician who actually has the best interest of people at heart. They do, but even if they do, they cannot completely work to fulfill the best interest of their people at heart. They can't. They cannot, because it goes completely against the incentives of the state. So, as I said at the beginning of this video, and I repeat again, people are better off when they allocate their own resources than rather than when we let the government do it for us. I would like to emphasize on one important point in this book, is that I developed a concept called measuring opportunity by the outcome. So measuring opportunity by the outcome means that based on what the outcome will be, you start allocating opportunities, and those opportunities you allocate will lead you to the outcome that you've envisioned. But the problem with that method is that human beings do not control all the factors of life. Nassim Taleb wrote the Inserto collection, where he talked a lot about randomness, saying that yes, human beings are very intelligent beings. They have the power, they have technological advancement, they have the power to shape things, but yet there are many things that we do not control. And the state is using that method, the method of measuring opportunity by the outcome, to make its decisions. And by doing that, the decision it makes do not lead to good outcomes for us, the people. Because they envision an outcome, but they don't even know if that outcome would necessarily be like that. And they deploy all their resources on that outcome, knowing that there's some factors that they do not control. And that methodology basically reflects arrogance, vanity, and an excess of self-confidence, while measuring the outcome by the opportunity means that because you don't know what the outcome will be, you rather go by the opportunity and see where that opportunity will take you. And generally, when you apply that method, the opportunity that you decide to take on leads you to even better outcomes that you envision yourself. It leads you to better outcome than the outcome that you envision at first. And that's why it is better for the layman to allocate his own resources than when we let the government allocating for us. That's what I explain in this book. So this book is basically 10 chapters. It is 10 chapters, and it contains like some equations, some graphs to explain. It's a mixture of qualitative and quantitative analysis, but overall it's a pretty easy read. So I definitely encourage you guys to get your copy and to read the book. It's a pretty easy read. It's easy to digest, and I will keep working toward the promotion of liberty. I will keep writing books to promote limited government, to promote personal responsibility, and to promote the advancement of the layman, because I am convinced that no one can manage our resources better than ourselves. So we cannot count on politicians to manage the resources that we own, because they're going to mismanage them. I mean, there is countless empirical evidence that show that the government mismanage resources, because they have to mismanage resources so that they can create more programs. Because if they manage it well, they cannot expand their power. So the program they create has to be deficient so that they can create more programs. So I strongly encourage you guys to order your copy. It's available on Amazon as paperback and a ebook version. Read. Let me know what you think, and yeah, share your thoughts in the comments. And until then, see you soon.